Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to this evening's virtual talk with Ingrid Betancourt. This is the first talk of a series of well-being talks that are being hosted by the How To Academy in partnership with Head Talks. My name is Oliver Chittenden, and I'm the founder of Head Talks, which is a mental health and well-being platform. It's non-profit and provides resources towards better mental health, resilience, and positivity. Clearly, these are things that are in abundant need at the moment. So hopefully, not only will you get inspiration from this talk, but also you'll be able to pick up some resources from our website or from the course that's the free course on isolation that's featured on the website. So welcome and thank you for tuning in. Ingrid Betancourt, our guest this evening, is a former Colombian politician. She was in Congress for many years, and it was while she was campaigning for to be a presidential candidate for the presidency in Colombia, where she was taken hostage by the FARC guerillas, who are a former terrorist organization group in Colombia. And she was taken into the jungle and held hostage for just under 7 years of her life. As you can imagine, this is a big part of her life. And we're here to talk to Ingrid about what it's like to be in isolation. I mean, clearly, many of us around the world are in isolation right now. So we're going to be asking Ingrid to share some tips with us about how she's coping with isolation and perhaps how it compares to her time in the jungle in Colombia for all that time many years ago. So welcome, Ingrid, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Oliver. Really, it's my pleasure. And I think it's very valuable, the effort you're doing to bring us together in a kind of very intimate way, because we feel like we're very close and yet it's virtual. So it's very surprising.
That's right. We're all dialing in from our homes, which is the new world we're living in right now. Ingrid, I thought I'd start by just asking you, where you are in the world and how has this isolation been, this COVID-19 enforced isolation been for you? How have you been coping with it?
I'm in Oxford, and at the beginning it was a little odd because my plan was to go back to my family, and when they closed the borders, I didn't react on time. So I am left kind of stranded. But the feeling of confinement, of course, brought me back to the experience I had when I was in captivity. And there is a first feeling of frustration and some type of fear of not knowing if you're going to be able to cope with something that you think that has no limit ahead, because that's the problem, is that there's no deadline. There's no, it could be a month, it could be 3 years. We don't know. We don't know what will happen. And that was something that affected me a lot when I was in confinement, in captivity. So I think I have brought from that experience things, very simple things. I think we all do that in a very kind of intuitive way, which is, for example, and I think that for me in the jungle was very, very important, was to break everything into a day. I didn't want to go further than a day, because I didn't know if it, in my case, it was nearly 7 years. So
that's really interesting, because actually, like now, it's impossible to plan anything in the future. If you do start trying to plan something, like a holiday or when you're going to go back to work, you can just get into all sorts of going sort of round in a merry-go-round in your head, getting confused because there's so much uncertainty about the future. And I guess when you were in the jungle, it was the same thing. It's just like go day by day. You can't go further than that.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that if you break it day by day, then you get the sensation of getting back the control of your life, and that's very important. So what I'm doing now, for example, is that I have set for myself a very tight schedule. And you think, well, perhaps, or you're not working at the same pace, or probably you're working even more than you did before. You are perhaps in the space of the family with others, or perhaps you're like me, alone. In any case, I think that it's very important to be with a schedule, setting wake-up times, setting the time to go to bed and to sleep, have regular hours for the meal, the break of eating, and in between, finding activities that are rewarding. So those activities, of course, are the ones, the things that we must do, and others that we know we should do. For example, in my case, I'm finishing to write a thesis, so that's a must. I'm in my desk writing a lot. But then there are other things that I know I must do. For example, exercising, which is very, very important. So I have an hour and a half, 2 hours a day of exercising outdoors if I can, indoors if it's raining. And then I have things that have become kind of important for me. For example, at night before getting to bed, I meditate. And I'm doing something that I was doing in the jungle, which was, because the days were so long, so tedious, and so stressful, which I know it's kind of, it's a contradiction, but there was a lot of stress because we were surrounded with guards. Violence was always there. Any contact that you would have with any of these people was subject of problems. So what I would do was, at night, I would recap all the conversations, and there were not so many, that I would have during that day, thinking when my voice was too loud, or when my tone was not the proper one, or the word that I used was perhaps not the accurate, etc., etc. And today, because of course I have other communications with my family, I want to have time to talk to my mother, to my daughter, to my son, to my sister. I have all these very important calls that I just check on them all the time, and they check on me. I go through that too, because at the end of the day, I think, and that's something we can then dig a little bit further, but I think this is a time for change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, that I 100% agree, and it's very interesting to hear your coping strategies for isolation at the moment, and comparing it to your time in the jungle as a hostage. And clearly, the environments are very different. I guess one thing I wanted to ask you was, I think I remember you either said it to me because we're friends, or I read it somewhere, was that when you were in the jungle, you can either go on an outer journey or an inner journey. And I think what I understood by that is, it's very easy to just lose hope and just go down that rabbit hole. It's almost too easy. Or you can go on a sort of more intimate inward journey, and sort of almost a spiritual one, and discover things, use that time that you had in the jungle, but also that perhaps some of us have got now in isolation that we didn't have before, to kind of discover a little bit about yourself. Does that sort of ring true a little bit?
I think that's the experience we're all doing right now, which is that we are confronted with ourselves, and sometimes discovering who we are in different situations unveil who we really are. I mean, that's very, bizarre, because we think that we are the character that is at work, or the character that is in the family, or the character that is with the friends. And once you are alone, you find out that you have another relationship you have to take care of, which is your internal dialogue. And that person that is in front of you, in terms of extreme situations like the one we're living now, because it's extreme, because we're confronted with death of others, because it's something that is in our mind all the time. And this is something that was very similar to what I lived during captivity, because it was always, we could be killed, there could be a raid, the guys were armed around us. But now we don't know where it is, but it's there. We see people dying, and we are worried that the people we love wouldn't be as careful, or, so we're trying to see what we can do to have everybody safe and to be safe ourselves. And in that relation with ourselves, we are confronted with our fears, we're confronted with our disappointment of, sometimes we go in this path where we're thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done this. This was a mistake. I regret doing this. And I think those are the tricks we play to ourselves. And we have to be very, very aware that we can't play those games in this precise moment. We have to switch our mind frame to be very respectful of who we are in a moment where we are in total nudity in front of ourselves. And it means that we have, for example, to be very positive in everything. I mean, positive in thinking it's going to be okay, first thing. Then it's going to be okay with the people I love. Then it's going to be okay with me. I mean, this is something that we have to tell to ourselves. It's like the narrative that we have to change. And then being positive, it's really a narrative. It's not something, I mean, it's not because we're hurt or we're afraid or that we cannot tell ourselves another way of understanding what's happening. And this is very important. And then I think we have to sprinkle this narrative with things that are very easy to do and we need to do, which is, for example, to smile, even alone. It's very important to smile because something happens when we smile, that the whole energy, I mean, the whole feeling of ourselves changes. And I've done it so much, like when I see myself in the mirror just passing by and I see myself like concentrated and then I turn around and I smile. I don't want to I don't want to be alone with a connection with myself that is bringing me down. So smiling is very, very important. And then there are other things. For example, luxury. I mean, we're here. We can't do anything, right? We can't go shopping. We can't, do anything that would make us feel good. So what can we do in terms of luxury? But luxury, understanding luxury as those things that it's not about the price they have. It's about the contentment, the satisfaction they give us. And a good chocolate or a delicious olive oil or a great scent with a candle or anything that will make us that we are experiencing life to the full. And in my case, I remember a couple of days ago, I was like, I need something else. What is going to be my luxury today? And then I thought, I need music, but I need music of another kind. So I went to search all the operas I could find. And I have been in this spree of getting in the morning to just, making myself breakfast and listening, or on TV, on YouTube TV, watching an opera. It makes me so happy because I'm thinking, where was I that I didn't see this before? This voice, this guy, this movement, this girl, this piano, this, wow. And the day begins with another kind of,
I love that. I love that. That's brilliant. I think it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there certainly have been things that I think have surprised us in ourselves through this isolation. I mean, I, for myself, randomly, I'm not a big TV watcher, but I found a documentary on the Second World War and the First World War. I was like, oh my God, I know more now than I ever did at school. I mean, I felt completely like that's history, tick, done. And I was so happy about it. And now I'm trying to want to learn more about like what happened before that and before that. And it's given me great joy. So I think, it's nice, this idea that we've had some time to find out other things that we didn't know about before. And that feeds into what you were saying about the narrative, because we are surrounded by gloom and doom. The media, obviously, they're fueling it, but they're trying to be fair as well. But there's so much pain and grief and death, and it's just like, even if you don't feel like it's stressing you out mentally, it is subconsciously getting into you because you're around it and you're hearing it. And actually, I don't know if people read that people's dreams at the moment are being really affected by what's going on. I mean, mine have. I definitely know that. But there's a big thing that we're dreaming about being superheroes and saving the day, or like, just these or really dark dreams. And this need to counterbalance, the darkness around us with positivity, laughter, play, learning, I think is really, really important to do. And I think that's wonderful for you to have shared that with us, Ingrid. I love the idea of you dancing around your bowl of cereal in the morning to opera. It's just fantastic. I just sort of want to go back to the jungle, if I may, and just so people know who are listening, by the way, we are going to have time for questions, 20 minutes at the end, between 20 minutes before 7 o'clock. So do feel free to send in your questions. When you were in the jungle, Ingrid, for that time, what was the darkest time for you? I mean, when was it really difficult? At the start, in the middle, at the end? I mean, I'm kind of feeling like I'm starting to get really frustrated about the isolation. It's kind of a frustration has come in. And I wanted just to ask you when that time was and what kept you going when it got really, really bad in the jungle.
Well, the thing is that in the jungle, there are, if I have to pick the worst moment, there are kind of worst moments, you see, because there is a worst moment of violence. There is a worst moment of grief. There is a worst moment of, let's say, physical difficulty or health issues. I mean, so you see, because it was a long, long time. But if I have to put them all like in the same, health issues, grief, violence, what really lingers even today, that is something that I have, it's my daily pain, if you wish. It's something that I carry with me and I'll carry forever in this life. it's the departure of my father, because he died when I was in captivity, and that was for me horrendous.
And I think, I mean, that's very, you know, that's obviously horrendous for you, and the trauma of losing someone so close, and not being able to say goodbye to that person is something that I'm sure so many people are feeling right now. You know, there's no time to grieve. I mean, people are going to virtual funerals. You know, it's just so incredibly sad that you know, people can't talk to their dying relatives in hospital, you know, or see them or hug them before they leave this world. And that trauma and grief is something that's going to sadly live on after this virus has gone. Do you agree with that?
Totally. I think this is, it's going to be, once we resume our lives, I suppose with very different kind of characteristics, because I really think that we're going to be forced to change in many ways, in the way we relate to others, in the way we work, etc., etc. But what will stay is those people that we lost. And you see, one of the horrible things is that when it happens to you, you're forced to go back and to search the last time you saw the person that you loved. What did you say to that person? Were you tender enough? Did you say to that person that you loved her in a very powerful way? I mean, that makes you think two ways. First, and this is something that for me is very important, is we can't lose any opportunity in life to tell to the people we love that we love them. Because the fact is that we're reminded in a very violent way that we don't know when we're going to be, when we won't see them again. And we need, as you were saying, we need to check the historic box, and well, that's one we have to check. We need to tell our children, our mother, our sister, the people we love, we need to tell them in a very special way, looking at their eyes, you know what? You're the love of my life. I adore you. I mean, we need to say that at least once. Now, the other part of this reasoning is that, you see, I think that when you are cut of when somebody is cut of your life in such an abrupt way, and such a dramatic way, you experience feelings of guilt, you blame yourself in a way for things that you can't blame yourself for. So you need to heal. And at least for me, I don't know how people will do it, but for me, it was very important to acknowledge to myself that the pain I was feeling, and I was having nightmares for a year. I couldn't sleep because I was so afraid. You know, when my father died and I discovered that he had died, I remember going to sleep and the dream was always the same. I was a child, he was taking me by the hand, we were crossing a street, and then suddenly he was old and I had to take him to the hospital, and then I saved him. But then I woke up, and as I was waking up, I was, discovering again that he was not safe, that I was not with him, that I was in the jungle, and that he had died. And that transition from reality to a worse nightmare frightened me so much that for a year I had insomnia. I just couldn't sleep during the day. I would nap a little during the day, but not at night. Until the moment I began thinking that that was my way of telling him that I adored him. It was the pain.
Yeah.
It was another way of expressing to him my love. And then in a way, it allowed me to just embrace joy again.
Well, I mean, thank you for sharing that. I think, you know, these journeys with you know, things like grief and depression and anxiety, they're very personal journeys, and the way out is different for everyone. But there's no question that, you know, this narrative of what comes after, you know, this terrible disease and what it's inflicting on people's families and the loss. You know, there is going to be an ongoing dialogue there. I hope there is, where people are struggling, you know, with the post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, that they're dealing with the stress of having lost someone and not having been able to say goodbye. I mean, it's just, you know, incomprehensible. And I know, you know, I just hope that the support is there for people, and we make a story about that, because I think it's a big one. I wanted just to mention to people, it's actually Mental Health Awareness Week quite soon, and the topic was going to be sleep. So they were, you know, they chose sleep. Now that's been changed to kindness, because it was felt that kindness is a more suitable topic to focus on during this virus. And I think there's something really big in this, because I think, you know, what I'm hoping some of the positives that we learn from this virus is not only how to be kinder to one another and to have time, to give more time to one another, whether friends, family, or whatever, but also really importantly to be kind to ourselves. You know, whether it's little mini victories you have during the day when you're in isolation or outside, and just take the time to stop, say, wow, well done, I achieved that, instead of darting off to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I just think, you know, just focusing on gearing the conversation we're having now towards what this virus means, you know, what message is it bringing us? And I can't help feeling that, you know, this kindness is a big theme. Do you agree, Ingrid?
Yes. Well, kindness, you see tenderness, which is another way of expressing kindness, brings us back to something that is essential, I think, which is the shape of things, the beauty of things, the beauty of words, the beauty of emotions, the beauty of how we connect to others. Because we tend, in this day and age, to focus on the goal, the means, where we want to go. And we forget to just pay attention to the way we do things, the way we express things. And tenderness and beauty, and it makes things easier. It doesn't change the quality of whatever we want to do or to express, but it gives us more oxygen, more space. It allows to communicate to others and to ourselves without coming out from the defense mode. I think it's very important right now to focus on the way we do things and the way we say things and the way we behave, like the shape of things, the way we dress, the way we take care of ourselves, the aesthetic of life. We are all very sensitive to aesthetics. It brings joy to us. It's something that uplifts our emotions and the way we feel. And that's why kindness for me is something that is also beautiful. It's about, because you could be loving and not kind, you see. You could be with your child and be rough, even though you adore him. Well, that's not good. You see what I mean? I mean, we need to be careful with others, be tender, be sweet, because sometimes we think that others are like we are ourselves. I am a very tough person, and I tend to be tough to others because I think everybody can cope with that. And my mistake, I have been de-entangling many of my loving relationships because I have been rude. I have been too, too demanding, and so when I say this, it's because it's part of my reflection today. It's something that I have been trying for myself, saying, be soft, be sweet, be tender. And it works.
Yeah, I mean, how much of that do you think is a reflection of the society that we did live in? Whether we're going to go back to it or not, and what it's going to look like, we don't know. But, for example, when you came out as a hostage and there was a daring rescue to get you out of the jungle, and it had failed before for several times, but it managed to happen. You came back into the real world. It must have been a real shock, and you must, it's like, wow, this world's pretty angry.
Yes, well, the jungle was angry. The jungle was violent, but the world in liberation was rough too. And in fact, I never went back. I mean, I think if we think that we're going to resume our lives in the same way before and after COVID-19, I think it's a mistake.
Well, I'm for one, very glad to hear you say this, and I'm not sure if a politician is going to stand up and say something along those lines yet, but I hope that one does, because he'll get my vote. But the world is changing, but my fear is in 12 months from now, we'll be back in the same situation, patching up the same problems. That's the pessimist in me. What do you think the future holds? I mean, clearly we must know that, the environment is bursting. The days of going to New York for a meeting in one day is not sustainable. So the planet's under strain. Our happiness as human beings is under strain. We kind of knew that before the virus. We kind of knew that we were all really stretched and just stressing out, and the planet was about to collapse. So, we didn't really take notice in 2008 in the financial crash. Really, all the bankers just went and did the same thing afterwards, as far as I can make out. Do you think there's enough momentum for real change to happen now, Ingrid?
If we were to solve the problem of COVID-19 today, we would be running back to our lives with, selfishness and obliviousness. I say this because when I was kidnapped, it took me a year to change my mentality. I mean, and I remember thinking, I changed. There's something that happens in you where you understand that the year that has passed. It's done. And that puts you, it confronts you to a reality that is, that calls for change. So we will see. I think that if a year from now, we're still dealing with confinement in some way, I think it will have political repercussions, and we will need a new type of leaders. And we will need leaders that are happy and eager to do the real change. You see, one of the things that I think are very surprising is that we saw all the governments from China, which is not a democratic country, to all the European countries, to the States and South America and now Africa, etc. And the pattern of all the leaders were almost the same. It was first a denial, trying to cover the thing or diminish the problem, saying it's not very important, it's not, you know, I mean, it's a flu, it's not it's not going to affect us. But I mean, having the information why those leaders were saying this, and the reason was because they could foresee that the economic disruption was going to be enormous, and they didn't want to pay the political price for the economic situation that we're living today. But at some point in their minds, at some point, they understood that the economic came second, because the life problem, the death toll of the virus was going to be so immense that they had to choose, and they had to make the good choice. And the right choice was human lives. So for me, what this means is that for the first time in centuries, we are putting the life of people before economic interests. And if this is something that we can push to a momentum that becomes a political quality, then we will be able to change many, many things in the world we're living in.
Thank you, Ingrid. And I mean, you know, I know that you will be on that wave, surfing that wave of change when hopefully it does come. And, you know, let's hope that we do take some positives forward to life after COVID-19. I'm going to take some questions from the audience now, Ingrid, if I may. I'm just going to, I've got quite a few actually that have popped up. And I've got one here from James. He says, hi, Ingrid, when the behavior of the people around you stresses you out and you're unable to move away from it, what is your best coping technique?
Well, James, look, you know, I think that the only way out is to think that the enemy is not in front of you, but inside you. Because in fact, the problem is not what the people are saying to you, how annoying they are, or how exasperating they can be, but how you're going to control your emotions so that you are not letting anyone push your buttons. And so I would say that this is a very good moment to begin taking control of who we are. And it's yeah, the enemy is inside.
Thank you. And then we've got another one here from, I think it's Sylvia, saying, you know, in the jungle, where there were days when you just thought, I can't go on. I just simply can't go on. It's too horrific. How did you overcome those times?
Well, you see, the thing is that there are moments where you need to be passive with yourself, in the sense that you need to gather strength, and so you need to pause, because you can't do anything. So in a way, time passing by gives you the answer. For me, when I had those very dark moments, I would do things like, for example, Well, I was in captivity in an amazing surrounding, because the jungle could be very frightening, but it was also an amazing sight of beauty, of strange animals, of strange sounds, of strange vegetation. And I remember trying to swallow that beauty in order to give me an extra stamina, if you wish, in order to be able to continue. I think that at the end of the day, what keeps us going is love. And so love comes in very different, ways. It can come. I remember, for example, for me, it was very important to think about my children in happy moments. That would make me, their laughter, the words they would have as kids that were surprising, and the good humor in family, that helped me. But I was isolated, I was alone. So I needed to go back to those memories of all my loved ones that I was missing so much. But that was love. It's, the thing is that in our lives, we are like making a, a reserve of nice moments, of loving moments. And then when you are in total despair, you go back there and you take in that reserve of goodness that you've had in life. And then somehow it switches in you and you think, I'm a valuable person. I mean, they love me. I have to keep on because they love me. I can't fail them. I think that was the way I did.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you very much. And there's another one here from Lorraine. And she says, apologies if this is too personal a question, but did prayer come into your schedule at all? Prayer. Do you have a religious, I mean, maybe that is too personal, Ingrid, but does prayer and meditation come into your coping mechanisms?
Prayer is very important for me. And yes, it's very private because, it's private. But at the same time, for me, it was very, very, very important. When everything happened to me, I was so crossed with life. I remember questioning God and saying, why me? Why me? What did I do? I didn't do anything. Why are you taking it against me? What have I done? And then time passed by. And even though I was so crossed with God in a way, fighting with him helped me a lot because he was there. I mean, in my dialogue with him, he was there. And then I remember the day where I thought, I'm asking the wrong question because it's not why me. It's not about why me. It's not about me. It's too egocentric. No, it's how. How do I survive here? How do I change? How do I adapt? How? And then prayers in that moment were essential because I was confronted with very difficult emotions of hatred, of revenge, and I think that the idea I have of love, which is for me God, helped me to always tune back to that love and to that light. I was very afraid at some point. I was very sick at some point, and I was afraid that the abduction had turned me into one of them. And when I was saying one of them, I was thinking of the guards, the guerillas, that were they were full of hatred against what they thought I was. I was like the epitome of everything they hated. I was a woman. They were machist. I was a politician. They hated politics. They thought every politician was corrupt. They thought I was from a high class that would be exploiting the poor. I mean, I had everything for them to hate me. And so that was what I was receiving all the time: hatred, humiliation, violence. And I remember the moment when I thought, I don't want to desire to kill. I don't want to desire to take revenge. I don't want to fill myself with that poison of dark desires that will change me for good. I want to stay, in a way, I want to keep some type of naivete, some type of something of my childhood, something that would preserve me from the bad around, and praying was that. It was a shield.
Thank you very much for answering that personal question, Ingrid. It's very, very kind of you. I just sort of thought I'd mention, obviously there's a huge amount of anxiety, you know, in the global population right now, in terms of the uncertainty and the fear of how we're going to deal with this disease. I mean, do you feel scared, Ingrid, about COVID-19?
Yes, very much. You know, I remember it was first days of February. I saw on CNN a footage of a young girl, a university student, that was videotaping Wuhan. And we were seeing what was happening in Wuhan. And suddenly it was a ghost town, no one in the streets. And I remember there was this person in the street, and then there was like a drone hovering on top of that person. And it was a police drone. And the police drone was telling that person that she should use a mask and she should go back to her home. And when I saw that, and I saw and I heard what the girl was saying, like that it was every time they went out, they had their temperature checked, that they need to disinfect everything out and in. I mean, and I thought, this is going to come here. We need to get ready. And I remember I called all my family. Everybody thought I was paranoid with post-traumatic from the jungle. And I remember buying masks and buying gel and buying everything. So I was scared. But at the same time, I was taking action. And I think that that's the way, I mean, for me, it works. When I'm scared, I confront and I do something. I don't just stay scared.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That completely makes sense. Take control of the situation and do what, you know, use the knowledge that you do have to protect yourself and the loved ones around you, and be kind to your neighbors, etc.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think that there's no fatality. We're not doomed to something. We can, every day is a new opportunity we have to change, whatever we have to change. to take care of whatever we have to take care. Yeah, looking forwards, not backwards.
This is from an attendee, Anonymous, actually saying, moving to tenderness and a journey approach to life is not easy when one is so outcome orientated. How does one start? What practical things? It's quite an interesting question, that actually. It's like moving to tenderness and a journey approach to life is not easy when one is so outcome orientated.
It's so true. And you see, one of the impacts of being in confinement is not having an agenda, is not having your, you know, we live with this type of rhythm where we have meetings and we have things that we have to do, and we are programmed. And so the next day we know that we're going to go someplace and we're going to do some type of activity, etc. And suddenly everything stops. It's like if the world was not going round anymore. So if we are oriented to being, you know, in doing things and in acting and in speaking and communicating, we need to continue. In other ways, we need to try to find what can we do to maintain contact, and we're doing it. I mean, working like we're doing, teleworking, communicating with the family through WhatsApp, FaceTime, etc. All the things we are doing in order to supply the deficiency of human contact that we're having now. And we need to put all our heart into it, because I think that, you know, in the jungle, I didn't have that. I didn't have any way of communicating with anyone that I loved. And so I really treasure today in this confinement the fact that I can call my mother whenever I want and talk to her for hours if I want, or to my children, or to my friends, or even to people. I've been rediscovering my loved ones, people that I loved in my life at some moment, and then we departed, and then we're back again, discovering that love is intact. And it's a reward in so many ways. So it's not because physically we can't be out, that we can't be emotionally connected and loving and out there. Yeah. We need to find that it has to work for us. Each of us has to find that way.
Absolutely. And I think I found myself calling friends up who I haven't spoken to for years and reconnecting, because there's a little bit more time and space to do that sort of thing. And it's crazy because, like you say, these are people that you loved at a stage in your life, and that love hasn't gone anywhere. It's there, you know, if you reach out and touch it. Thank you, Ingrid. I think also, by the way, that's the same with nature. I mean, you know, the Easter 2020 will be remembered by COVID-19, but I think a lot of people, especially in England, who are listening, you know, this spring has been amazing in England, you know, and the power of nature and the colors and the sound of the birds and everything just seems so much more alive. And can't help thinking that, you know, again, that's the planet just, you know, telling us, God, thank you for downing all those aeroplanes and giving us a break. Don't you think, Ingrid?
Absolutely. You know, I have had in my phone as a, you know, it's a wake-up call, but not really, because it only sounds at 9:30. So I'm already, but it's just a reminder that at 9:30 I have to go moving in other things, because I tend to linger and read things, and then 9:30 I have to be moving. So 9:30, there is this alarm that comes up, and it's a bird that sings, right? And it's in Apple, it's in my iPhone, and it's lovely. It really does the sound of the bird. Well, since this spring, I am waken up by the birds singing, but so loud that at the beginning I thought it was my alarm. I thought, oh my God, what happened? No, it's the birds. They are singing so loud. And every time I hear the birds singing, I am grateful, that we are giving nature a break from our selfishness. We have been spoiled brats. That's what we have been.
I couldn't agree more, but I think we're going to open up a whole new conversation there if we go down that road. But yeah, let's give our planet a break, guys. I've got a question here, and by the way, gratitude. I mean, I've really picked up on that. Ingrid, what you said. Being grateful for the little things we have. Even in the most dire situations. That it is such a. There is healing in being grateful. And people talk about grateful lists and gratitude journals. It does actually really work. So thank you for really highlighting that. We're just coming to the end now. I've got one question here, which is from Salima, and it says, how to protect yourself to not fall back to the same mistakes as before the virus. When do you know that you've actually changed?
Wow.
Good question.
So good question. Well, I'm going to share with you something. When I was in captivity, at some point, I decided that I was going to forgive. Okay? I was going to forgive. Not because I was a good-hearted person. No. It was because the revenge was, I couldn't breathe. I was so, it was transforming me into somebody very, I was deformed by pain. So I thought, no, I have to forgive. So I have been out from the jungle now for 12 years. And this decision of forgiveness was 2 years before I was freed. So we're talking about 14 years. Okay. And my experience with that decision of forgiveness, which is a decision, is that I go 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes I find myself in a situation where I'm talking about someone or a situation in the jungle for some reason, and I have this flow of emotions that are so harsh, and I'm thinking, I haven't forgiven. I'm still there. I have to redo it all again. So what I want to say with this is that I don't think that it's what we have to be vigilant with ourselves. That's my point. Because transforming ourselves from inside takes much more than doing abs and having our 6 packs. It takes much more than that.
Yeah.
So we have to be, how to say this? You spoke about kindness. I think that's the word, perhaps. We have to be kind to ourselves in not chastising, not having a guilt trip, not being infuriated because we didn't make it, because we're back there again. No. The moment we realize we're back there, it's the moment when we're changing and we're saying, I'm changing. I don't want to be back there. I'm gonna correct this now.
Ingrid, thank you. We've got to 7 o'clock. I feel we could go on for ages, but that's been a hugely inspiring conversation. I thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone, and I hope this has been inspiring. Take care out there from How To Academy and from Head Talks. We've got lots of resources at Head Talks to help you, support you through isolation and resilience thereafter. So do sign up. Ingrid, thank you. And have a lovely evening. Stay safe, everyone. And yeah, I guess ride that wave, surf that wave of change when it comes. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Oliver, and to all of you. And I would like to say goodbye in Spanish. Los quiero mucho, con todo mi corazón. Para adelante.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you.